Now listen and answer questions 6 to 10.
First, they have to choose the subjects.
So what kind of topics are acceptable?
Well, the most important thing is that they must be of national interest, something that represents the country in some way and which is highly recognizable at a glance. So, for instance, characters from books are popular, or you often find examples of national animals and birds.
Like the kangaroo on Australian stamps.
Yes, exactly. And in the UK, you can't have pictures of people who are alive. Well, with the notable exception of members of the British royal family. So no living people ever appear on Australian or British stamps.
That seems a bit stupid.
Well, not really. The policy is under review, I believe, but many stamp enthusiasts see good reason for keeping it that way, to avoid the possibility of people in power using their influence to get onto the stamps.
No, I suppose that's the point.
One favourite topic in the UK is kings and queens. For instance, King Henry VIII, famous for his 6 wives, appeared on a British stamp together with a stamp featuring each of his wives.
Some of the stamps are pretty unusual, aren't they?
Yeah.
So I'm just going to skip for question 10 now, because it's on a different page. Here you can see an example of 3 monks. I apologize if the picture is unclear. In the first month, you can see a picture of people sitting at a cafe, I think, and they're sitting in parallel seats. All right? So it's like let's go ahead. It can be like a small seat here, and then there's a table and a seat there. People sit here and here, something like that, right? But the second picture features circular tables. Circular tables. So you might have a table like this and then seats all around it. Maybe. And let's just remove this clutter. The third one, I can see a building here, right? And umbrellas. So this definitely is an outdoor cafe.
For example, in New Zealand, they had a series of stamps the shape of coffee cups.
Really? Are you kidding?
No, they did. Look, I've got some pictures here. See? And they all showed people from different eras sitting in coffee shops and just relaxing. The 90-cent stamp and the $1.20 stamp had people sitting at tables in the cafe enjoying themselves.
By the way, make sure you notice which pictures shows the New Zealand stamp worth $1.50. So let's try it again.
A series of stamps the shape of coffee cups.
Really? Are you kidding?
No, they did. Look, I've got some pictures here. See? And they all showed people from different eras sitting in coffee shops and just relaxing. The 90-cent stamp and the $1.20 stamp had people sitting at tables in the cafe enjoying themselves. And the $1.50 stamp shows people sitting outside in the sunshine.
That's actually really nice.
So you can see section 3 now. That is a typical example of section 3. All right? You have questions divided into 2, and most of them are multiple choice questions, with the exception of the last 6 to 9 questions. Anyway, quickly marking the answers here. We'll begin with 10, to which the answer is C. Okay? They say they're sitting outside in the sunshine. What about here? Okay, we finished. All right. Stamps must represent aspects of national interest. Examples, pictures of characters from books. This is exactly what they say. Characters from books. Just that. Remember, you are only allowed to write 3 words maximum. Of course, less than that, no problem. Or specific examples of wildlife. The man said, maybe the Australian kangaroo. Alright, by the way, you can just say kangaroo. Alright, and make sure you get that spelling right. It's not C, it's K. Yeah, counterintuitive, I know. Especially that cat is pronounced with a, or is written or spelled with a C, but kangaroo with a K. K-A-N-G-A-R-O-O. Okay? There are no... Now, she said the answer could be people who are alive. People who are alive. Of course, this sadly is not the right answer because, as you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 words do not consider or are not considered to be right. So later in the conversation, okay, or just 2 seconds into the later, they said living people. People. Actually, they said it literally. There are no living people, or living people are never shown on Australian or British stamps. This is exactly what they said. A favorite topic in Britain is, of course, kings and queens. Alright, so here's the answer, kings and queens. Let's carry on now to section 4. Alright? Section 4 is a lecture. One speaker, specific topic. Alright? Before we go on to this here, let's talk a bit about section 4, which is probably, I said that at the beginning of the lecture, which is probably why you are here. Okay? Just a moment. So, section 4 is probably why you are here. Alright? This means, I'm talking about the difficulty of section 4. Why? Because section 4 has 10 questions. And you must read all of them in the time given. Even I cannot read the 10 questions in the time given. I'll have to admit. Alright? I have never been able to read the 10 questions correctly, accurately in the time given. You will most often miss the questions, or just read 3 or 4, and then that's it. Alright? That's it. The recording starts. My strategy, alright, for solving it is very simple, yet very effective. It's very effective. I'm going to talk to you about the strategy once we are confronted with one of the questions, with the question for section 10, section 4, okay, it's somewhere later. Or let me just say it here now, okay, and repeat it when the question comes. Section 4 is involved with actually not or stealing the time for section 4 from section 1. At the beginning of the test, okay, they will first give you some introductions on what you should expect during the test. So listen to the following, or you will hear several recordings, and you will have, this is exactly what she says, you will hear several recordings and you will have to answer questions based on what you hear. There will be time for you to check your answers and transfer your answers to the answer sheet. You should answer the questions as you listen, as the recording will be played once only. Now turn to section 1. You turn to section 4. When she says turn to section 1, you turn to section 4. Read the questions, because in section 1 she'll say, listen, or you will hear, in section 1 she will say, you will hear a recording of 2 people, maybe you're reserving a ticket, or based on the situation, blah, blah, blah. Okay? On this, you will see, of course she'll continue saying, you will see that there is an example that is solved for you. On this occasion only, you will hear the recording based on that. And then the example will be played, and then she will tell you to read questions 1 to 4, 1 to 5. All of this time is available for you to read section 4. Alright? So, as you finish section 4 here, okay, by the way, she will ask you to read questions 1 to 5 before telling you the examples. Okay? So you'll have enough time to read for section 4, and when she says you will hear that there is an example. Okay, you quickly turn back to section 1 and then read the questions regarding this part. Okay, while the example is being played, because you don't need to listen to the example. Okay, let's get back to section 4 now. Okay, so you will have enough time to read section 4 once you have read some of the first questions in that section during the beginning of section 1. And let's just jump in. Section 4 is generally a lecture. Okay, it's a professor or maybe someone giving a seminar, and it's usually about an academic topic. I have heard it all. It can be about whales, okay? Whales that are dying, or the problems of beaching. Beaching is B-E-A-C-H-I-N-G. Don't get any bad ideas. Beaching. Alright? Okay? It's when whales and dolphins swim to shore and then die at the shore, on the beach. What about maybe frogs in Australia, honeybees in Australia, and so on and so forth. They are mostly about topics you have never heard before, and you don't have to worry about, or you will have to adapt to what you hear. Okay? Of course, you have to pay. You have to be interested, of course. Anyway, sadly, of course, you might not be interested in honeybees from Australia, or how did this certain type of toad get there, or so, or a certain castle in Britain and its history. But yeah, you want marks, so come on, I'm pretty sure you can get interested if you just give it some more effort, right? Okay. During the lecture, the speaker will use a high level of English, right? He will use very colorful expressions, okay? He will use linking phrases, which are a key component of everything you will do in the IELTS test. You will see linking phrases all the time in the reading. You will hear them in section 4, and you will have to use them in your writing, and perhaps even in your speaking. All right? And that means that you need to learn what every one of them means. You have a list here. Let's begin. Even if it's translated to حتى لو, even though مع إن. For instance, it's like, for example. Secondly, number 2, not only, okay, as, regardless of, بغض النظر عن, because of, بسبب, and finally, أخيرا, okay? My God, speaking Arabic is tiring. Anyway, sorry guys. I'm not very used to speaking Arabic in between my English lessons. I really hope I don't offend you. Anyway, let's get back here to section or question A. And before you all go home, I'd like to thank you all for coming along to the meeting this evening. Okay, very easy. Let's read the entire list here. Let's read all of the questions before answering. I got a disappointing mark. Disappointing is you have high hopes and suddenly, it's bad. Okay, so yes, I've got disappointing mark. I've got a disappointing mark for my essay. I put a lot of effort into it. Okay, please note that there is a comma here. Okay, below the point I placed, there is a comma. Right here, that's a comma. What about C? People always say that other languages are spoken much faster, which is a reminder for me, in which I need to speak a little bit slower. Are spoken much faster than their own. Full stop, comma. Full stop, comma. They say, don't New Yorkers speak fast, but really it's just a problem of understanding. D, there are 3 levels of government in Australia. Firstly, there is federal government, state government, and thirdly, local government. E. Is the new law going to make smoking more expensive? It's also going to discourage young people from taking it up. To take up something is to begin a habit. Okay? Take up means begin habit. So I took up here, begin a habit. Alright? To take up something, to begin a habit, and that means anything. I took up swimming when I was 20. I took up swimming. Okay, so I started swimming every week, every 2 days, okay, as a habit. By the way, I'm just going to leave this. Okay, next. The opposition party wins the election, it won't affect the way people live. The accident, the cost of my car insurance has increased considerably. Now, without further humming, let's take a look at the answers. What do you think the answer for A could be? It is finally. Funnily enough. Okay, so the answer to the first question is finally. Alright. Just a moment. What about B? I got a disappointing mark for my essay, although I put a lot of effort into it. Of course, although it's not written, of course, but it carries the same meaning as even though. Okay? Even though. So here's another linking sentence here. Okay? Linking phrase, sorry. People always say that other languages are spoken... I always need to remember to speak slowly. People always say that other languages are spoken much faster than their own. They say, don't New Yorkers speak fast? But it's really just, it's just a problem of understanding. Here they have written, or they have given you a general sentence, followed by explanation. So it can be an example, or it's actually an example. Okay? So you can say for example, or of course the word written here is for instance. Okay, here. For instance. The next one, there are 3 levels of government in Australia. Firstly, there is federal government. By the way, a federal government is a government that governs. Is a government that is concerned with the entire country, okay? All of Australia. It means that it makes laws that affect all of Australia and in which all of the states are supposed or need to follow them. So and so on. The second one, which is the answer, state government. Secondly, state government, and thirdly, local government. State government is the government of the state. Let's say the United States has 50 states. So there's a government that manages only California or Florida or Texas. Okay. The same thing with Australia. There's a state government for New South Wales. Maybe. Something is the new law going to make smoking more expensive? It's also going to discourage young people from smoking. It's also usually follows not only. Not only. Not only is the new law going to make smoking. Okay. What about F? something the opposition party wins the election, it won't affect the way people live. They say something, alright, but it doesn't matter if it happens, okay, or yeah, it doesn't matter if it happens, it won't affect the way people live. So, we're talking about the worst case scenario, the opposition party, even though, or even if, sorry. Even if it won't affect. Let's take a look at G finally. Something of the accident. Okay, the accident, that's a noun. The accident. It's not a verb or a complete sentence, so because of. Be very careful of because. And because of. There's a difference between because and because of. So if you're going to use because only, you'll just say because I made an accident maybe last week, the cost of my insurance has increased considerably. Let's carry on. Now for the section 4, the one that many people have been avoiding. Let's take a look here at the International Space Station, ISS, and this will be the topic of section 4, or our training for today. While reading section 4, try to imagine, of course, there will be a heading. So it's very likely that you will understand what they're talking about, even if you don't have much information about the topic. Let's read. While you are reading through the questions in the listening test, ask yourself some things about the topic to get prepared for the recording. Note any pictures or graphics. So please note that it's very likely that there will be pictures. A picture of a frog, a picture of some drawings or the space station. In the next IELTS practice, you're going to hear about the International Space Station. So try to answer these questions to prepare yourself for the topic. What do you know about the International Space Station? Try to remember everything you heard. محطة الفضاء الدولية. Okay? Where is it? In orbit. What happens there? Okay? Would you like to spend 90 days in space with 6 other people? Okay? Would you like to be an astronaut if you are stuck in this hunk of steel or hunk of metal with 6 other people? I wouldn't. I don't like people. If so, why? Why not? So of course you will be trapped in a very small space with 6 people. What kind of things would you have to prepare yourself for? What preparations? Would you have to bring something with you? Toothpaste, toothbrush, some clothes. What type of clothes? Maybe. What advice would you give someone who was going? So you met an astronaut or someone who will go up to space to be an astronaut in just a few days. What should you tell them? Bring a mobile phone. Take a mobile phone with you. What do the letters ISS stand for? It's the International Space Station. So let's take a look here at the preparation. The preparation. We're going to just prepare for the text now. Just a moment. Good. All right. So let's take a look here at the questions. How many nations are involved in the ISS? How many nations? All right. How much should the ISS have cost to build? So the correct or the keyword is nations here, and the ISS should cost. All right, should have cost. How's the water supply maintained on board? All right then. So let's just take a look here at something here. Here we go. So let's take a look here at these questions and solve track 18, I think.
Track 18.
Today, I'm going to be talking to you about the International Space Station, the ISS, which is a joint venture between 20 countries, the 5 nations of the United States of America, Russia, Japan, Canada, Brazil, and the 15 nations of the European Space Agency. It's the largest and most complex international scientific project in the history of mankind, and, as you can imagine, something of this size doesn't come cheap. So how much is it actually going to cost? Well, despite the fact that it was estimated to cost $120 billion, it's already gone $8 billion over budget. So now we're looking at $128 billion. People always want to know the same kind of information about the ISS. So I'll run through the most common questions. First of all, they always ask me how we manage with so little water on board the station. Well, I can assure you that nothing goes to waste. Because of the impracticality of transporting large amounts of liquid into space, we've come up with some ingenious solutions. For instance, everyone on board, including the laboratory rats, loses water when they exhale or sweat. This humidity goes through a condensation process before being returned to the water supply. Because, of course, if we don't reuse the water, the station would need about 20,000 kilograms of water transported from Earth each year, which just couldn't be done.
So here was the recording. I hope you got the answers right. Let's quickly say that the answers are C and should have cost to build, so 120 billion, all right? And finally, by recycling the water. So, again, let me just a moment here. So, the first one, how many nations are involved in the ISS? They're talking about the United States, Russia, I think Brazil, China, maybe Britain, right? And the 15 nations of the European Space Committee. Okay. How much should the ISS have cost to build? He said how much should have cost to build. All right. So it should have cost 120 billion, but the price increased by 8 billion to become 128 billion. So the answer is 120. How is the water supply maintained on board? We're talking about the water supply here. Water supply maintained. Maintained here is how we can keep them from being lost. We're talking about by recycling all the water. He said, the question here was, how do you manage with so little water on the International Space Station? And he said that transporting the water from Earth was or is very impractical. Let's listen one more time and focus on the linking phrases now.
Today, I'm going to be talking to you about the International Space Station, the ISS, which is a joint venture between 20 countries, the 5 nations of the United States of America, Russia, Japan, Canada, Brazil, and the 15 nations of the European Space Agency. It's the largest and most complex international scientific project in the history of mankind, and, as you can imagine, something of this size doesn't come cheap.
And, as you can imagine.
So how much is it actually going to cost? Well, despite the fact that it was estimated to cost $120 billion,
despite the fact it's going to cost $120 billion,
it's already gone $8 billion over budget. So now we're looking at $128 billion. People always want to know the same kind of information about the ISS. So I'll run through the most common questions. First of all, they always ask me how we manage with so little water on board the station. Well, I can assure you that nothing goes to waste. Because of the impracticality of transporting large amounts of liquid into space,
because of the impracticality, so because of,
we've come up with some ingenious solutions. For instance, everyone on board, including the laboratory rats, loses water when they exhale or sweat. This humidity goes through a condensation process before being returned to the water supply. Because, of course, if we don't reuse the water, the station would need about 20,000 kilograms of water transported from Earth each year, which just couldn't be done.
Which just couldn't be done. Okay, so by the way, I just noticed that the man pronounced laboratory, right? Or laboratories, so on. So there are two pronunciations for the lab, okay? The first one is the British laboratory. I'm just going to write it down here. Laboratory. Okay, laboratory. Some people, or the Americans, say it like this. Laboratory. Laboratory and laboratory. So, of course, there are some people who pronounce it as laboratory like this, which is, of course, incorrect. Laboratory. This is incorrect, sadly. So I think we don't need all of this. Let's just delete it. And then get back to section 3. I think we have solved this one. So let's carry on.